Miles here again. So I went with Idoneth Deepkin when they were first spoiled. I think it was Adepticon 2 years ago. Because I love aquatic things. Seeing the turtle, the Leviathan, was a big selling point. And I just basically wanted to get all of the aquatic mounted riders, but for competitive and rules-wise, Eels, the Morsar Guard with the Volt Spears are very, very strong. They have a 14-inch move, so they can get across the table to objectives or big, scary monsters, and they can just dish out a ton of mortal wounds and a ton of damage, even outside of turn 3 High Tide. Especially with the endless spells Chromatic Cogs, you get a 16-inch move and a 2d6 plus 2 charge. So even if it is turn 1 and you count as being in cover, still you're across the table in your opponent's face. So out of the book, the stronger units are the Morsar Guard with Bolt Spears and Aquilan Kings, just to give them the reroll hit rolls of 1. And Volturnos is the King of Kings. His supreme command ability adds 1 to all the attacks characteristics for Aquilans during the High Tide turn, and you can stack it with other King supreme command abilities, and you can just have 1 pack of eels doing 20 plus attacks out of nowhere. The Eidolon is a good caster. He can heal himself, he gets to reroll spells, so he's good for when you want to get the cogs down on turn 1 or 2 to get across the table to objectives. The one drawback for the eels is their armor save. It is on a 4+, but any Rend can easily get them into 5s and 6s, and then they kind of fall over a little bit easy. Having 4 wounds is nice, and the speed, but if you get countercharged, then you lose out on all that bonus Rend and damage and all the benefits of charging, and then you're just doing regular attacks with no Rend, 1 damage. It's still a ton of attacks, which is good, but you lose out on that alpha striking turn if you get charged. The Aquilan Alopex, the sharks, they're sweet models. I love they're riding on sharks with a harpoon gun, and I haven't tried them at all. I want to. They seem neat. They have a cool ability of if a unit lost wounds, they get to re-roll their charges against that unit, like a little blood in the water effect. The Leviathan, the turtle, has a bunch of shooting and a bunch of health, and it gives you cover if you're nearby, just because of its sheer size. And then the other strong unit is Thralls, because they're 2 attacks each. They may only have 1 wound, and they have like 4 bravery and a 4 armor save, but they get extra attacks if they're attacking things that only have 1 health, or their attacks do more damage if they're attacking things that have 4 or more wounds. So you can have them go up against a swarm of little guys and get extra attacks against them, or you can throw them up against big, heavy monsters, and then they're going to do extra damage against them.
Do they get some sort of bonus if they're running underneath the turtle? I had read something about that.
I'm not I think about Thralls. I know that it does a big 18-inch bubble of everyone underneath it counts as being in cover. But I'm not sure if it buffs specifically Thralls. I know Lotan, the character with an octopus on his back, and the Soul Render both affect Thralls by adding models to the unit by essentially healing them or stealing souls from the enemy and making them into Thralls. And then the other two heroes are the Tidecaster and the Soul Scryer. The Tidecaster is your basic wizard hero that if you have her as your general, you can actually take the Tides of Death and go in reverse. So you have High Tide on turn 2 versus turn 3. And then the Soul Render the Soul Scryer has an ability that he can be set up in the sea with up to 2 other units, and they can infiltrate on the side. And then he can pick a unit and basically say, alright, go get their souls. And the units nearby add 3 to their charge roll, but they have to charge that target and they have to end within half an inch. But usually, and you have to start at least 9 inches away. So you're usually making that charge. But otherwise, it's a well-rounded book. All the different enclaves are pretty sweet with all the different abilities. I picked, I guess it's pronounced Fwathen, because that's mostly focused on the Eel Riders. It lets all of your mounts reroll wound rolls of 1 in the fight phase, and then all the Aquilans reroll hit rolls of 1 in Flood Tide, which is turn 2. And then it has your Ebb Tide turn count as Flood Tide, so that you get to reroll hit rolls of 1 in turns 2 and 4. But otherwise, I think they're pretty sweet. I wouldn't be surprised if the Warstar Guard with the spears get a point increase in the next General's Handbook. They're currently 160 points for 3, which is super devastating, and they're super aggressive. But the other guard are pointed a little bit less, and their shields have the electric bonus of not taking Ren in close combat, which we'll see when the time comes, if anything happens. There is one battalion I want to try with a buddy of mine because he plays Sylvaneth. It's called the Alliance of Wood and Sea. It is Deacon with Sylvaneth. It's a bunch of thralls, some sharks, some eels, a bunch of dryads, and a tree lord. And what it does is that it takes all the Sylvaneth portion of that battalion and lets them benefit from the Tides of Death that the Deepkin have. So then they get to count as being in cover and then run in charge and then fight first in the fight phase. And so I want with a buddy of mine, we can just use our 2 armies and play against pretty much anyone. And I think it'd be sweet. I also love the name of it. Gloomtide shipwrecks are interesting. They did get a little bit of a change. The FAQ errata is you get 2 etheric vortexes, and each vortex is either half of a boat or a full boat. So you either get 2 halves or 2 full boats placed as terrain, and they have to be at least 6 inches away from objectives. So you can't just plop it on an objective, plop your thralls in there, and say, come at me with the 6 of Feel No Pain. They're very good at countering Sylvaneth trees. So if you think they're going to place their tree somewhere and like block your alley of Eel Run, you just plop your boat there instead and make them pick somewhere else. They also deal mortal wounds to enemies nearby, so if you think you're going to have a big clash in the middle that's not near an objective, you can place a boat down and just kind of hunker down and deal mortal wounds and heal up. Deepkin, yay!